Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks for joining me. As always, really appreciate it. This week, I'm interviewing another young person doing amazing things. If you're a long-time listener, a loyal listener to all of these episodes, God love you. But if you're a loyal listener, you know that it's been several months ago, probably 6 months ago, I interviewed a 16-year-old epidemiologist who talked all about, COVID and writing a textbook for young learners, all about that. This one, another young person. This one's not 16, this one's 14, who's actually already written 14 books, and not picture books, 14 chapter books, 14 novels that, if you read the description, could be, any book from an adult. They're kind of those, there's several different versions, several different kind of genres that she's in, but I think that her main genre is kind of the dystopian world. So, look at some of the big blockbuster movies here recently have been kind of set in that type of thing. So I think you're going to really, really be impressed by Shanti, the author, Shanti Hershenson. Hopefully I said her name correctly there. I was worried about it in the interview too, you'll hear. But she's just an amazing person. At 14, already have, pen to paper, 14 books and long books. Just an amazing person. I think you're going to just hear the passion behind her writing just in listening to her. She's just so cool. I really, really appreciated speaking with her. I know she's going to do great things. She's already got that, that background. I can see her getting really big and being a best-selling author. And then people are like, whoa, she's got, by that point, she's got, 30 books from the past that I can read. So I really think this is just the beginning for Shanti. So I think you're going to enjoy this one, whether you're, a book lover, whether you like just an awesome story, and what's better than a 14-year-old that has just taken the literary world by the horns here. So I think everyone can find a reason that this one's a really, really cool interview. Without further ado, here is my interview with Shanti Hershenson. I'm here today with Shanti Hershenson. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I don't ever really hide, the beforehand thing. I wanted to practice your name. I said your name correctly, right?
Yes. Good.
Well, I mean, we're obviously going to talk about your being an author and writing quite a few books, and at a relatively young age. But before we get into that, just tell us just a little bit about yourself, kind of outside of maybe the literary world, so to speak.
So I'm 14 years old, so I have a lot of interests that normal teenagers have. I sometimes like to go skateboarding. I like to go on walks to the beach. Actually, this is not a surprise to anyone, but one of my biggest interests outside writing is reading. I love to read books. I have hundreds of books in my room, and I've read most of them. And it's something that I think kind of correlates with the writing, because it helps me improve my writing and also helps me get new ideas and kind of see what other authors are doing.
No, that's awesome. I'm not probably as big a reader as you are, but I do have a bookshelf, and there are a good little chunk of probably, maybe early chapter books I just remember reading as a kid, and it's almost just nostalgic. Whether I'll ever read them again, probably not, but I just like to have them. So I get that for sure. So let's talk a little bit about, about your writing. But before we get to that, kind of what created your passion for it. Obviously you're 14 years old. I've interviewed some younger people before that's doing some really cool things. Never like to really super dwell on people's age, because, I think that's kind of almost discounts what people are doing sometimes, that, hey, it's not that just because I'm 14, and even if I write a crappy book, that doesn't necessarily matter. I think you're putting out good work regardless of what age you are. So don't want to necessarily dwell on that, but I do want to kind of talk about what created this passion for writing. Most people at your age probably are just now maybe finding that passion, but you've already been doing it for a long time.
So the earliest time I remember writing was in the first grade, and it was during free choice. And I've talked about this a lot, but I just decided I wanted to make a book, not really write it necessarily, because for the most part, it was just pictures and like a few words. I was 5 years old then. So it wasn't that great, but I ended up stapling it together and it was my book. And after that, over maybe up until third grade, I kept rewriting it and kept making new versions of it and kept making these little booklets that, of course, at some point changed into more written things that I got to type on the computer.
So what, you talked about how that first book was more kind of a picture book. What at what age did you write, you think, your first, not necessarily just a easy story, the cat jumped over the log or whatever, but something that actually was kind of cohesive and a nice story from beginning to end? When did that start?
Third grade is I started writing these books that had a beginning, middle, and the end. It's like, I think the book I did in like second, first grade, it had this story, but it didn't exactly make sense. It was more, the cat meets this character tells the cat has to do something, and then the cat does it at the end. But this one had kind of more of a plot to it. I think it was called Strider and the Two Worlds. Don't get me wrong, I might be wrong. I haven't seen it since like maybe fifth grade is the last time I ended up rereading it. And I don't actually remember the plot. It was probably a ripoff of some other book, but it had, the plot points, it had the characters, it had a villain that was actually a developed character. And I've thought about rewriting it at some point. Unfortunately, I've moved twice since then, and it would be a little hard to dig it up. But it's one of those stories that I feel like definitely was kind of a milestone for me and paved the way for other stories that would eventually turn into books.
Yeah, and I just wonder exactly how it happened, where you went from the regular writing that most people are doing, and most people at your age probably don't necessarily like writing at all. They're just getting into wanting to read actual longer chapter books and all that kind of stuff, where you've gotten to where you're at. So I mean, when did you finally decide, hey, I'm going to actually write a book? I don't know whether first of all, I don't know whether are you self-publishing books, or do you have a publisher, or how does that work?
So until I turn probably around 16, I'm going to keep self-publishing books to get my work out there and get this like portfolio and this platform. And then if I'm not insanely successful self-publishing by then, I'll probably start querying agents and getting traditionally published. Though I think as a 14-year-old, that would probably be very hard and stressful. And it's something I was originally going to do, but like, I think right now I have to focus on building a platform the most.
So you do self-publish them. That makes it a little easier to obviously get them on paper, but not necessarily easier to get it in front of other people. But how did you decide that, hey, I'm going to start writing some books with some real substance behind them? Because these are regular length books for the most adults. I'm sure that are you writing most of your books? Are they young adult type books, or are they books for everyone, or exactly where it is? I know they've got chapters to them anyways.
So all of my books are categorized under young adult. Actually, the majority of them are. I have one that's more older, but I do have a readership of people of all ages. I have adults reading and reviewing my books, and I have some teenagers around my age, and I have even some people younger than me reading them. And honestly, I have like very, specific target audiences for all of my books, but I think like anyone can really read them as long as they're old enough to understand the plot and it's not going to bother them in any way.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about those books. We're talking about your process just a little bit, but I know you kind of dip in quite a few different genres and have things on quite a few topics. So let's talk a little bit about some of the books and the topics that you covered.
So the first actual novel I wrote, just for context, in sixth grade, I had, written another book with my friend. It was a short story more of a novella, actually. There were two of them, and they weren't that great, but they were better than anything else I or even my friend had written. And we published those, which I'm probably going to take down at some point, though I have people still reading them and actually enjoying them. Very surprised about that. And, but I wrote my first novel when I was 12 years old in the middle of the pandemic. And it was called Biomwalk, and it was about an alien invasion where all the characters are isolated in these biomes. And that was kind of, I think, kind of representation of how the pandemic felt to a 12-year-old. you're stuck in one place, you can't do anything. And I wrote that with the idea that it was going to be like another short story or novella. And it actually turned out to be a 250,000 word, 800-page novel. And it was insane. And 800 pages, almost 900, is a little long for a book, especially considering this could actually be multiple books. And I ended up splitting it into 3 books. And the first one's actually already published. And it's around almost 250 pages. But that like drafted Biomlock was kind of the first realization that I can write longer, better works, and I can improve them, and I can keep going back and editing them. And actually, over the summer, I wrote a 4th Biomlock book. So I returned to the world.
I want to ask you first about the novellas that you said you may not be there for much longer, but I think you probably should keep them. It kind of shows you where you came from. Obviously, I look at some of these early podcasts that I do and think, oh my gosh, those were cringy. So I can see where you're at there, but what were they about?
So that there were the 2, I called them Odyssey, and they were about a cat that gets transported to another world. They were in a very strange way. They were very similar to the first book not the first book I ever wrote, but that like first memory I have of writing. In what I wrote there, they were very similar to. And I published them just because I wanted to get the book in my hands. But they were about this cat that gets transported to another world. It's like I could really only write about cats then. Those were like cats. I guess I read a lot about cats, and I had trouble writing about actual people because people in many ways are a lot more complex than cat characters. So I stick to cats. And the second one is very chaotic. There's some very deep lore to these books that my friend and I made before actually writing the book. So like the whole first part of the book is just this really long guide to the characters and the poems and all the lore. It was a very weird format where I guess it was more like the lore was like half the book and then like this story was the other. I mean, it was very interesting, and I have not reread them since. I don't plan on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that Biomlock. You said that you thought it was going to be a novella and then it turned into a huge book. So what is your process with writing? Are you someone who outlines everything? Somebody who kind of wakes up every day and just sees where the characters take you, or how does that work for you?
I am somewhere in the middle, but definitely more leaning to not outlining at all. For Biomlock, I actually started writing it as a screenplay. I did not get past one line. I actually didn't even get past the plot because a screenplay is very different than a novel. And while I think I could maybe become a screenwriter when I'm older, it's not something that I've been like too focused on like achieving as a 14-year-old. And I ended up rewriting it as an actual novel. And I did not have any ideas whatsoever what was going to happen. I had been very kind of planning out like the main character in my head very vaguely, and just like the name and what he looked like. And that process, I think, actually allowed me to kind of develop him a little more naturally with what was going on in the story. And and then I added the backstories later.
So let's talk about some of those other books. I know you've written quite a few. So are most of them, I know at least one isn't, but is most of them kind of this, I don't even know what you call it. Is it dystopian? I don't even know what you would call some of this type of genre, but I know it's not all that way.
Yeah, the majority of my books I think are pretty much dystopia. I have one that's a little more leaning science fiction as opposed to dystopia, and I have one that's like totally post-apocalyptic dystopia, I'll talk about that one. But actually, after Biomlock, I did not go and write another dystopia. I wrote a series of kind of horror, paranormal fantasy novellas, and I actually wrote these while I was writing Biomlock. And they're about 100 pages. They would be longer if the text size wasn't so small, but I did not know how to format a book then. And these are very creepy, very weird, and they're very exciting too. And they have probably the most fascinating plot out of any of my books. They're probably one of my favorites to write. And actually, about a week ago, I finished writing a novel that's like the villain origin story for that series. That one's a little slower, but it's still pretty interesting.
Yeah. So what are those books called?
So they're called The Chronicles of Xyle Delane. The first one is The Nightmare of Xyle Delane. And it was originally going to be a full-length novel, except about 20,000 words into the book, I thought of this really kind of crazy ending when like I felt it was starting to wrap up a little and maybe I should just wait. I need to like pick things up again. And I thought of this really awful ending. It's really insane. I love the ending of it, but it's something. It's really something. It's, and I was just like, oh, my readers would hate me if I ended right here. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then I ended up writing the second book, and the second book ends an even worse way than the first one. And the third one has a more calmer ending.
Well, I guess we just have to pick them up and find out exactly what that crazy ending is. So, name a couple of your other books. How many books have you written? I know there's quite a few.
I've written 14 books, and
14.
I published 9 of them.
That's you've stayed busy. Well, before we talk about the other books, 14 books, you're 14 years old. What grade does that put you in?
I'm in 8th grade. My birthday is in October. So I'll turn 15 next October.
Man, so I mean, I don't know. I just have, I guess, so many questions of how you fit in writing all of this, and then also your studies. I assume you're pretty good at in English and fine arts, anyways.
Yeah, I am. I think for studying mainly, it's like I try to finish my writing very early on. I'm in my creative writing elective, and I try to get done with my writing for the day during that elective. And if not, I'll kind of continue it at home, and that'll give me some time to like work on my homework, which I don't have much of, thankfully, or else I would be definitely not able to write this many books.
You said that you try to get your writing done in your class. How often do you write? Is it a daily thing, or what does your writing process look like there?
I make sure to write 1,000 to 2,000 words every single day, and that's for school days. Over the summer, I will write 3,000 to 5,000 words. Generally, it's like 2,000. I was writing 4,000 words a day on one of my novels over the summer, The Accidental Insurgent, and I finished writing that novel in 16 days. And this is a 350-page novel. It's pretty long. It takes a couple hours to read, and it took me 16 days to write.
That's crazy for sure. How do these ideas come to you? I mean, I feel like, again, I don't want to discount your age, but I feel like a lot of authors, bring some of that life experience in it to figure out. You've obviously maybe have slightly less given you're a little younger. So that just makes it actually more impressive that you come up with all of these things, because it really is just your creative thoughts.
I get ideas from anything and everything. I will see something random going on in the street, or I'll just have like this random idea pop in my head. I think The Accidental Insurgent is pretty fun. And also Xyle Delane. Those both were kind of based on like images, especially Xyle Delane was based on like liminal spaces, and those images of like kind of things that look like kind of nostalgic and kind of familiar, but you've never seen them before. And I use that to kind of make this vibe for especially Xyle, where it's like kind of creepy, like nostalgic, but in a creepy and kind of sad way.
So you're talking about you write at least a couple thousand words a day. Are you the type that are writing one book at a time and focusing on that? Are you focusing on a couple different projects at once and kind of going from wherever your creative juices are flowing, or how does that work?
I definitely try to be only writing one novel. Though right now I'm actually I'm writing my 15th book, and I am editing my 12th book, The God's Right Hand. And that's another dystopian. It's pretty cool. I can talk about that. And I'm actually editing that one. I'm trying to edit 5 chapters a day. I'm kind of had to slow on that just because of school. So I'm editing a few chapters, and then I'm writing my 1,000 words.
So I'm just thinking about your family, your parents. What do they think when, you probably, I don't know exactly, you can talk about it, but came to them at first that, hey, I'm going to write a book. And now you've just taken off and you've written, numerous books. So where are they at in all this? Are they thinking, what in the world's going on? Are they just, behind you all the way? I'm sure they are, but let's talk a little bit about your family, because everybody's got to have a strong, supportive family, I think, to do what you've done.
Yeah, they're really, really supportive. They take me to they drive me to bookstores. I have my mom help me talk to bookstores about doing book signings, which is something that's like really on my mind right now. I have them, usually I let them read maybe one chapter from the book, and usually I'll maybe let them read until like something really important or a big plot twist happens, and then their free trial ends and they have to wait till the book is published. But yeah, they're some of the most supportive parents ever. And they've read almost all my books. It's kind of gotten to the point where I keep writing so many new books that it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, I could see that too. I think that's funny. Same thing. The only thing I can kind of relate and correlate that to is this podcast. I feel like, my family, my fiance, all that they were behind it. And now, this is, 70 plus episodes in. It's hard to keep up. I mean, they do their best they can, but it's hard sometimes. So I get that for sure. Do they like all your books? Do they ever come to you and like, I can't believe you wrote this, or where did you learn about this? Or do they ever give you a hard time about what you put in your books?
They definitely really like all my books, though. I don't know how much they like the amount of characters I kill off in some of my books. I kill off a lot of characters in my books sometimes, just because it helps move the story along, and it's something that, like, especially with the Xyle books, it was essential to kill off a bunch of characters in order for stuff to happen in the book. And I don't know how happy my parents are about that. They might be a little concerned, but I mean, it's fiction. It's not the worst thing.
Yeah, I there are authors out there that even I like that I think, oh my gosh, that I don't understand how they get these ideas. It's kind of scary, but I feel like obviously it's just a creative process. But I could see where they come from with that. They've got to sleep in the same house with you, and they know that all these crazy ways to kill off people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's funny. That's funny. So I want to give you the opportunity. You're talking a little bit about these different books, but I mean, just kind of give us a few, maybe that this may be impossible. Maybe it's not, if you have some that you think you enjoy more, but a few that if somebody's wanting to check you out, kind of maybe a diverse look at a few different books that you have. Tell us what they're called, a little bit of a synopsis, and just so people can kind of see the type of books that you're writing.
So definitely, if you're looking to start reading my books, I would recommend starting with either The Nightmare of Xyle Delane or Biomlock, perhaps The Accidental Insurgent. Xyle Delane it's not exactly more mature than the other ones. It's a little more darker than the other ones. And it is about a boy named Aaron. He's 10 years old, and it takes place in 2009, where he's out. It starts out with him playing with his friend, playing in the front yard of this manor. And what they realize is there's a ghost in the window, or they think she's a ghost. They don't really know. It's hard to tell. And what ends up happening is when he finally meets this ghost, very strange things start occurring, and he slowly finds himself whisked away into this like ancient, not really ancient, but like old plot in his town. And it has to do with magic and other worlds and scary magicians. It's very interesting. And there's a lot I can't say without spoiling it, but it's very creepy and very exciting.
Where did that idea come from? You talk about how you get ideas from all over the place. Where did that come from? Hopefully you didn't see a ghost in the window when you were playing outside.
That one came from just little images of like oddly familiar places and things that look like maybe they could be from a parallel universe, from another world. And it kind of like embodies this idea of like kind of the unknown and all this like kind of creepy stuff. It's really interesting. It's hard to explain without spoiling it. And that's definitely one of the ones I recommend you start out with. I started writing this when I was maybe about 12, and I finished it pretty quickly. And I think I was 13 by then. And I published it when I was 13. It was actually I published this actually before Biomlock. And it was just something I put out there, and it did pretty well. And then, of course, I recommend Biomlock. It is part of a 4-book, going to be 5 or 6 book series, but the first 3 books are kind of like, you don't have to read the 4th one if you don't want to. The first 3 books kind of tie it all up. And the first one is currently out. It is about an alien invasion, and it follows Griffin, Kira, and Colette and some of their allies. And they're all teenagers living in the Biomlock, which was created by the aliens who took over the world 30 years prior to when the book starts. And these aliens are scary, and they have their secrets, and their king also has his secrets. And it has kind of follows this adventure of these characters as they're discovering who they are, and they're fighting sickness or aliens. And it is a pretty long series. The 3rd book is significantly long. The other ones, I have the next 2 books printed, but of course these are the unedited versions of them. I don't know how to describe it other than it's very exciting, and it's both kind of childish, and it's both pretty like dark. And then that one's definitely pretty good to read if you're like 12 or 13. There are a lot of topics in that like 12 and 13-year-olds have to deal with. And then, of course, the next one, I recommend you could start out with. And you can start out with really any of these three. Is The Accidental Insurgent, and this is another dystopian novel, and it follows Allie, and she lives in this society that's just full of rules. And one of the main rules is you cannot be late to school. And of course, she's late to school. And in this society, it should also be mentioned that after you graduate the endmost school, which is basically high school, you have 2 years to prove your worth, kind of. And if you don't prove your worth in those 2 years, you're going to be killed. Except Allie might not make it that far. And even with the help of her friend Finch, it'd be really hard for her to survive, especially there's threats around every corner. And there's just this kind of small world where the reader will get to explore almost every inch of it.
So do you think, do you think you are all these books you talked about, the one series maybe good for that, that young adult look? Are they all good for any readers, or which one would be best for someone who maybe is an adult reader?
I think perhaps The Accidental Insurgent and Biomlock is not for adults, it's more for kids. I do actually The God's Right Hand, which is it's not out yet, but it will be released very soon, is another great one for adults. Though if you're an adult and you're not looking for dystopian or science fiction, I would really recommend you read You Won't Know Her Name. It has a new cover. This is my old cover. But You Won't Know Her Name it's technically a young adult book, but some of the topics are not suitable for young readers. And it is based on a true story, and it's a novel told in poetry. It's about bullying, and it's about abuse, and it's very disturbing. It's also empowering and powerful towards the end, but it's definitely actually the book most people start with, though I don't recommend they do, because it's kind of the one that you gotta look up the trigger warnings for, see if you can actually handle it before you read it, or else you may not want to read my other books, even though they are nothing like this one.
You said that a lot of people start with that one. Which of your books is maybe the most popular with readers? Not necessarily those who read all of your books, but I guess which one sells the most copies?
Oh, 100% You Won't Know Her Name.
Okay.
You Won't Know Her Name and its companion, I Know Her Name. They sell a lot. You Won't Know Her Name sells significantly more than any other one of my books. And I think that also is because it has a new really pretty cover now. I don't have any versions of that cover on me right now. And it sells right now. The ebook is actually free. It has a couple downloads each day. I have some days where it will randomly spike and get like a couple dozen downloads. I've had some days where it's gotten thousands of downloads in a single day. And the paper it sells a lot of paperbacks too. And I think it's probably safe to say that half of all the books I've ever sold have been If You Won't Know Her Name. That's
kind of, some people maybe look at it as a bad thing, just because, hey, I've written so much else and this is what's getting all the traction. But again, I think that's going to help you, even if 10% of the people who read it go and look at your other books, that's still an opportunity to gain more readers. So I think that's a cool thing. What do you think, as far as the way that you write? This may be hard for you to answer, and I'm sure this is, your goal is to write, at an extremely high level. Do you get a lot of people who, maybe comment that I had no idea, you were 14, you write like an adult, or is it more, are you more kind of gearing your writing towards those younger readers, so you're kind of keeping it a little bit more basic, or how does that work?
I get a lot of people say that I write like an adult, in that like they didn't realize I was 14 when they read my book, or I've had some reviews for my books that are like think I'm an adult, and it's very strange for me because I don't at all think of myself as an adult. I get very surprised when some people think I'm an adult. For some of my books, I do try to kind of make the writing a little more readable. For The Accidental Insurgent, I wanted to make the writing a little more not overly descriptive, a little more easy to read, in a way repetitive, but that's kind of like how the style is. And that was specifically because I think this book appeals to like 14-year-olds a little more than surprisingly Biomlock does. Biomlock is written in a very kind of wordy way, but it also allows for this really rich kind of development of the world. But for the most part, I think all of my books are kind of written at the same reading level.
I gotcha.
And come to think of it, You Won't Know Her Name is written in a way that's very easy to read, and the poems are very easy to read. They're not overly like kind of with similes and metaphors. They're very easy to understand, and that is specifically to get the story out without people having any questions.
So how much do you think that this, this writing, obviously you do it every day, but how much of it do you think kind of is defining you at the moment? I mean, is it something that you go to school and then people hear you're a writer and they're like, oh my gosh, they're surprised, or is almost everyone knows, hey, you're the girl who writes all these books?
People are generally really surprised when they find out, though definitely I am known as the kid who just writes all these books and wrote the book You Won't Know Her Name, which takes place at our school.
Yeah.
And though actually I don't know how many people actually know that. I have a lot of classmates who, follow me on Instagram and are like, oh my gosh, you're so cool, you're writing these books. And I've sometimes given some copies of my books to my classmates. I think my teachers were fairly surprised to find out about that when I walked into their classes for the first time. But I actually still have some teachers who are like, oh, hi, how's your book doing? And they remember like me when I was writing Biomlock. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a lot more of them now.
That's funny. That's funny. So how can people find these books? I know that you self-publish. Where can people pick them up? You mentioned a free book, I think maybe on Amazon. So talk about where people are going to find the books.
Yeah, so all of my books are available on Amazon.com and other retailers. The hardcovers for The Accidental Insurgent and You Won't Know Her Name are on Barnes & Noble. And they're actually pretty much everywhere you can buy books online. And yes, the ebook for You Won't Know Her Name and the ebook for the first Xylo Delane book, The Nightmare of Xylo Delane, is also free. So you can just pick those up for free and you can download them straight to your Kindle. Or if you have like Kobo or any of those other sites, you'll probably be able to find them there. And as for my other books, I Know Her Name, which is it's not the sequel to You Won't Know Her Name. It's really just a collection of poetry. And that book will be free very soon. I'm not sure when yet, but probably when its KDP Select term ends.
Yeah, well, very cool. I want to wrap it up in just a second, but I do want to ask you a question that I've asked most authors, and I feel like you may be able to answer it best just because of your youth. I think that's a helpful thing here. What advice do you give to people who want to start writing? I've interviewed people have been writing for 25 years, New York Times bestsellers, those type of things, and their answers are good, but then again, I feel like they're almost so far removed from that early process that it's hard for them to tell people how to write that first line. So what advice do you have for somebody who wants to start writing a book?
Don't overly focus on what's going to happen in your story. Don't really spend all this time planning out your book, planning out every little detail before you start writing. Sit down, write your first line, and just write something interesting. Write what interests you, not what you think readers will like, because there might be some point where maybe you're not going to publish it, but you're still going to have this book. And just your first line can change 1,000 times. You can change every word of your book, but still, in order to change those things, you need to actually have the draft written. And I think just write out the scene. Maybe not even focus so much on this really exciting first line. Write what intrigues you. Write your first scene. Just come up with your basic character and then add in your developmental details as you go. And at some point, you're going to have a draft done. And of course, I tell everyone, write every single day. It doesn't matter if you're writing 100 words or 1,000 or 500 or 5,000. Just write every single day, and it helps you get in a routine. And it gets easier and easier. And it kind of like gives you this it actually tricks your brain and like thinking, okay, we're going to write today and we're going to do a really good job.
No, I think that's awesome. So what do you hope the future holds? I'm sure writing a lot more, but you've got high school to graduate too. And the future, I don't know, college is in the plans, but what do you hope the future holds maybe in, the next 5-10 years for kind of your young adult area? And then what do you hope the future holds long term?
So of course I want to stick with writing books. I want to start speaking at schools and helping people and probably teaching writing classes. And I think after college, I think I'm probably going to settle into, being an author. I'm hoping by then I can have a successful enough career that I won't have to worry too much about getting a job and I already have one. And I also do want to write movies and I want to do screenwriting. That's not something that I want to start learning how to do that. But as of now, it's not. It's like I want to really focus on these books, and maybe someday they'll become movies. And that's something I really, really want to happen.
No, I think that would be really cool for sure. Well, I really appreciate talking with you. Amazon's where you're going to find the books. What's your outside of the books? What's your connection points if people want to connect with you? If you even have that.
One of the biggest ways you can connect with me is through my website. You can contact me there, and you can find all my books. You can find everything there. And my website is shantihershenson.com, ShantiHershenson.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at Shanti Hershenson or TikTok at Shanti Who Writes. And those are great ways to get in contact with me. If you need writing tips, you can look at my TikTok. I post a lot and I like helping other young writers. And I kind of like helping people understand that like, this is not like something that's like, you can do this too. It's not really as hard as it seems, I feel like. Maybe just because I've already done it, but it's not like impossible.
So that's good advice, kind of end it. That I think it really, what you said earlier is kind of the key, that a book doesn't start with 200 pages already done. It starts with that first line, and you can work as much as you need to kind of refine the whole process. So I think that's what everyone's afraid of. They think, oh my gosh, I got to write 200 pages. Well, no, you have to write one word first. So I think that's really powerful what you said there, for sure. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that was Shanti Hershenson. What a cool person. I'm just thoroughly impressed by her passion for writing, and at such a young age. She's just done amazing things. She's going to continue doing really, really cool things. I'm going to put a link to her Amazon page to check out her books. Several of them are free right now, so it doesn't hurt you at all to check those out. Going to put a link to her website, her other social media too. All of these interviews ever, the links that they give are always in the show notes. No difference here. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned a little bit about writing, about the process from somebody who's doing it at such a young age. It's just filled with passion for it. It was really cool, for sure. Of course, check us out if you haven't already. Go follow us on Instagram, Not Enough Podcast. Like us on all of the things you can. I guess that would be Facebook. Subscribe, follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Go leave that 5-star review. Maybe even write a review. That would be amazing. Always appreciate when you do that. Definitely appreciate you being here. Appreciate Shanti being here. Take it away, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time, where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or, hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.